trade that froze the NBA. The moment the news hit, the NBA world stopped scrolling. LaMelo Ball, the face of the Charlotte Hornets, the flashy young guard who brought life back into a franchise that had been starving for hope, was suddenly gone. Not injured, not benched, not slowly pushed out through quiet rumors. Traded. Sent to the Minnesota Timberwolves in a blockbuster move that instantly split two fan bases and sent shockwaves across the league. And the wildest part is not even the trade itself. The wildest part is what people started saying about LaMelo afterward. Some headlines made it sound like he was crushed. Some clips tried to paint him as heartbroken. Some fans even pushed the idea that LaMelo was depressed about leaving Charlotte, like this was a nightmare he never saw coming. But once you look closer, the story starts to twist in a completely different direction, because this was not just a player getting moved. This was Charlotte choosing the future over feelings. This was Minnesota throwing its chips onto the table beside Anthony Edwards. This was a 4-year-old star leaving the only NBA home he had ever known, while the internet rushed to tell the world how he supposedly felt before anyone actually checked what he said. The Hornets received Naz Reid, future draft picks, pick swaps, and serious flexibility. The Timberwolves received LaMelo Ball and Josh Green. On paper, it looked like business, but emotionally, it felt much bigger. Charlotte fans were hurt because they lost their franchise star right after the team finally started looking alive again. Minnesota fans were excited about LaMelo, but also heartbroken to lose Naz Reid, one of the most loved players in their building. So sadness was everywhere. But was it really LaMelo's sadness? That is the question this story has to answer. Because if LaMelo truly felt betrayed, this trade becomes one kind of drama. But if the depressed narrative was created by clickbait, fan emotion, and fake internet noise, then this becomes something even more dangerous. A reminder that in today's NBA, a headline can travel faster than the truth. Before we go deeper, tell me where you are watching from right now. Are you watching from Charlotte, Minnesota, Los Angeles, New York, or somewhere else? If you think LaMelo and Anthony Edwards can become a dangerous backcourt, comment 1. If you think Minnesota made a risky mistake, comment 2. And make sure you subscribe, because this trade is only the beginning of a story that could change the entire NBA season. Why Charlotte finally let him go. For years, LaMelo Ball was not just another player in Charlotte. He was the reason people looked at the Hornets differently. He brought flash, energy, attention, and the kind of creativity that made a struggling franchise feel young again. Every no-look pass, every deep three, every fast break assist gave Charlotte fans a reason to believe the future might finally be different. That is why the trade hit so hard. Because when a team moves the face of its franchise, people immediately assume something went wrong behind the scenes. Maybe the player wanted out. Maybe the front office lost patience. Maybe the relationship broke down quietly. But this situation does not feel that simple. The Hornets were not desperately shopping LaMelo around the league. They were listening. And once Minnesota pushed a massive offer across the table, Charlotte had to face the kind of decision that separates emotion from business. The return was not small. Naz Reid gave Charlotte a proven frontcourt piece. The future first-round pick gave them long-term power. The pick swaps gave them leverage over Minnesota's future. The second-round picks gave them extra roster-building chances. And the financial flexibility gave the front office room to reshape the team without rushing into a panic move. That matters because Charlotte was not acting like a team trying to disappear. They were acting like a team trying to control its timeline. The painful part is that LaMelo had just helped them look alive again. The Hornets had gone from being ignored to becoming one of the more interesting young teams in the East. They had fought, improved, and gotten close enough to the postseason conversation that fans could actually feel momentum building. That is what made the decision so brutal. Charlotte was not trading a failed experiment, they were trading hope. But hope is expensive when the league knows your star has value. And in the NBA, sometimes the offer becomes too big to reject, even when the player means everything to the city. That is the cold side of basketball. Fans fall in love with the jersey. Front offices have to calculate windows, contracts, health, draft capital, and long-term survival. So Charlotte made the move that hurt now because they believed it could protect later. They did not erase LaMelo's chapter. They cashed it in for the next one. And that is where the heartbreak began. Minnesota's all-in gamble. Minnesota did not make this move to win a press conference. The Timberwolves made this move because they believed their championship window was no longer some distant dream. It was right there, sitting beside Anthony Edwards, waiting for the front office to decide how bold it really wanted to be. Edwards had already become the kind of star who changes a franchise's temperature. He was explosive, fearless, emotional, and dangerous in the exact way every contender needs. But he needed help. Not just another scorer, not just another role player. He needed someone who could take pressure off him when defenses loaded up, someone who could organize the floor, someone who could make the game easier when playoff possessions slowed down and every mistake felt heavier. That is why LaMelo made sense. LaMelo is not a normal point guard. He plays like he sees the floor from a different camera angle. He throws passes before defenders even realize the window is open. He can push the pace, create chaos in transition, pull up from deep, and turn ordinary teammates into threats just by bending the defense with his imagination. Next to Anthony Edwards, that vision becomes terrifying. Imagine Edwards no longer having to create every advantage by himself. Imagine him sprinting the wing while LaMelo fires the ball ahead before the defense gets set. Imagine LaMelo drawing two defenders, then finding Edwards cutting into open space with momentum. That is the kind of basketball that can turn a good offense into a nightmare. But this is not a safe bet. Minnesota paid a serious price. They gave up a beloved player in Naz Reid. They moved future draft power. They thinned out parts of their roster. They took on a player with incredible talent, but also real durability questions. This was not a small adjustment. This was a franchise pushing a stack of chips to the middle of the table and saying, "We believe this is our moment." And that is what makes the trade so fascinating. If LaMelo stays healthy and the chemistry works, Minnesota may have created one of the most electric backcourts in the NBA. But if the fit gets messy, if the injuries return, or if the depth cracks under playoff pressure, this same move could become the decision people replay for years. That is the gamble, and Minnesota chose to take it. The fake sadness around LaMelo. The loudest part of the story was not the trade pack. It was the emotion people attached to it. Within hours, the internet had already decided how LaMelo Ball felt. Some people said he looked crushed, others claimed he was unhappy. Headlines started shaping the idea that he was depressed about leaving Charlotte, as if the world had been given some private window into his mind. But that is where the story gets dangerous, because there is a huge difference between a player saying something and the internet deciding it for him. In this case, the emotional noise was real, but the direction was wrong. Charlotte fans were hurt. They had every reason to be. LaMelo had been their star, their identity, their reason to believe the franchise was finally climbing out of the darkness. Losing him right after the team started to show life felt like having the future pulled away too soon. Minnesota fans were emotional too, but for a different reason. They were gaining a star, but losing Naz Reid, a player who had become more than a rotation piece. He was loved. He represented toughness, loyalty, and a connection with the fan base that cannot be replaced by numbers on a trade sheet. So yes, there was sadness everywhere, but that sadness belonged to the fans. It did not automatically belong to LaMelo. That is how modern NBA drama gets manufactured. A fan base feels pain. A clip gets posted. A headline stretches the truth. A reaction gets taken out of context. Then suddenly, an emotion that was never confirmed becomes the center of the entire story. And once the algorithm grabs it, the truth has to fight uphill. The problem is not that fans were emotional. They should be. Sports are emotional. The problem is when fan emotion gets turned into a fake quote, a fake reaction, or a fake mental state for a player who never said those words. That is why this chapter matters. Because before we analyze whether LaMelo fits in Minnesota, before we debate whether Charlotte won the trade, before we decide who took the bigger risk, we have to separate the real story from the invented one. And the real story is simple. People were sad about the trade, but LaMelo never gave the internet permission to speak for him. What LaMelo actually said. Here is where the entire story flips. Because after all the noise, all the sad headlines, all the rumors, and all the dramatic thumbnails, LaMelo Ball's actual reaction did not sound like heartbreak. It did not sound like regret. It did not sound like a player who felt trapped. When asked about going to Minnesota, he called it a dream. That one word changes everything. A dream. Not a punishment, not a nightmare, not a betrayal, a dream. And that matters because in a story built around fake emotion, the player's own words are the only thing that should carry real weight. LaMelo did not sit there and describe the move like his career had been damaged. He did not frame Minnesota as a place he wanted to avoid. He leaned into the opportunity. That does not mean leaving Charlotte meant nothing to him. Of course it mattered. Charlotte drafted him. Charlotte gave him the keys. Charlotte watched him grow from a creative young guard into one of the most recognizable players in the league. That kind of history does not disappear overnight. But athletes can feel two things at once. LaMelo could appreciate Charlotte and still be excited about Minnesota. He could respect his first NBA home and still see a better competitive future next to Anthony Edwards. He could understand the business of the trade and still choose to attack the next chapter with energy instead of bitterness. That is what the internet often refuses to accept. It wants every story to be extreme. A player is either devastated or disrespectful, loyal or selfish, betrayed or cold. But real life is rarely that clean, and NBA careers move too fast for players to live inside one emotion forever. LaMelo's comments about the backcourt fit made the tone even clearer. He seemed comfortable talking about sharing the floor, about how two guards could operate, about how the game might feel more open and natural. That is not the language of someone mentally checked out. That is the language of someone already imagining the basketball. And basketball is where this story belongs. Not in fake sadness, not in forced drama, not in clips designed to make people angry. The truth is much more interesting. LaMelo is not walking into Minnesota as a broken star. He is walking in as a talented, unpredictable, high upside creator with a chance to completely reshape a contender. That is the real reveal. The real fear is his health. The real concern with LaMelo Ball is not his move. It is his body. That is the part Minnesota cannot ignore, no matter how exciting the highlights look. Because LaMelo's talent has never been the question. Everyone can see the passing. Everyone can see the creativity. Everyone can see the confidence, the size, the flair, and the ability to make an offense feel alive. The question is whether he can stay on the floor long enough for all of that to matter. That is the risk sitting underneath this entire trade. LaMelo has dealt with injuries that interrupted seasons, disrupted rhythm, and made teams wonder how reliable he can be across an 8-2 game schedule. For a player whose game depends on movement, balance, speed changes, and sudden direction shifts, lower body health is not a small detail. It is the foundation. Minnesota knows that. They did not trade for a mystery. They traded for a superstar level talent with a known risk attached. That is why this deal is so intense. If LaMelo gives the Wolves 70 healthy games and enters the playoffs with rhythm, the trade could look brilliant. If he misses long stretches or cannot stay explosive, the same deal could start to feel dangerous, and the price makes the pressure even heavy. When you give up beloved players and future draft control, patience disappears quickly. Fans may love the idea on day one, but if injuries hit, every missed game becomes a question. Every report becomes a concern. Every setback becomes a reminder of what the team gave away. That is the real drama. Not whether LaMelo smiled enough in a video, not whether a headline could twist his reaction. The real drama is whether Minnesota's medical staff, coaching staff, and roster structure can protect him well enough to unlock his best version. There is a hopeful side. His healthier season showed what the upside can look like when he is available. It proved he can carry a major role and still produce. It gave Minnesota a reason to believe the worst of the injury pattern might be behind him. But hope is not proof. The Timberwolves are betting that LaMelo's healthiest chapter is the beginning of a new normal, not a temporary break from old problems. That is the gamble they accepted. And now the entire season may depend on whether that bet was right. LaMelo and Anthony Edwards. Dream or disaster? On paper, LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards look like a basketball video game. One is the passer who can turn chaos into art. The other is the scorer who can turn one step of space into a highlight. LaMelo sees the play early. Edwards attacks the play violently. One bends the defense with vision, the other breaks it with power. That is why Minnesota made the call. The dream version is easy to imagine. LaMelo grabs the rebound and immediately pushes the floor. Edwards runs wide, defenders panic, and before the defense even gets organized, the ball is already flying ahead. Now, Edwards is attacking downhill with speed instead of fighting through a set defense. That is a nightmare for every team in the West. In the half court, the possibilities are just as dangerous. LaMelo can run pick and rolls, pull defenders out of position, and find shooters when the help collapses. Edwards can work off the ball more often, saving energy and getting cleaner scoring chances. Instead of forcing every big possession through one player, Minnesota can make defenses choose which star they want to stop. That is how great backcourts become unfair. But there is another side. Both players are used to having the ball. Both are at their best when they can create, improvise, and control rhythm. Chemistry will not appear just because the names look good together. It will require sacrifice. LaMelo will have to know when to push and when to simplify. Edwards will have to trust possessions that do not start with him. The coaching staff will have to build a system where both stars feel empowered without stepping on each other's space. That is not automatic. Defense also matters. Minnesota has strong pieces around them, especially with size and rim protection, but playoff teams hunt weaknesses. If LaMelo and Edwards lose focus defensively, opponents will test that backcourt every night. Talent can win games. Discipline wins series. So this pairing is not guaranteed to work. It is a high ceiling experiment. If it clicks, the Wolves become faster, more creative, more explosive, and far harder to guard. If it fails, the offense could become unstable, the roles could get cloudy, and the pressure could turn excitement into frustration. That is what makes this story so dangerous. LaMelo and Edwards could become the future of Minnesota basketball, or they could become the reason everyone questions the trade. What Charlotte gains and what Charlotte loses. Charlotte did not just lose a player, Charlotte lost a symbol. That is the part no trade machine can measure. LaMelo Ball represented something bigger than box scores. He represented attention, he represented style. He represented the rare feeling that the Hornets had someone other teams actually feared, someone young fans wanted to watch, someone who could make a quiet franchise feel loud again. So even if the trade makes sense on paper, it still hurts. The Hornets gained assets, flexibility, and future control, but they lost the player who made the rebuild feel personal. That is why fans may need time before they can judge the deal clearly. Right now, many will only feel the absent. They will remember the passes, the confidence, the swagger, the nights when LaMelo made Charlotte feel like it had a star worth protecting. But the front office has to see a different picture. They have to look at the long-term board. They have to ask whether LaMelo's timeline, health, contract, and team ceiling all matched where Charlotte was truly headed. They have to ask whether one exciting player was enough to build a serious contender, or whether the smarter move was to turn him into multiple pieces before the opportunity disappeared. That is the cruel math of rebuilding. Sometimes the player fans love most is also the player with the highest trade value. And if a team is not fully convinced it can win big around him, the best time to move him may be when the rest of the league still sees star-level upside. Charlotte now has choices. They can build through the draft, they can use the picks in future trades, they can develop younger players with more freedom, they can let Naz Reid bring toughness and stability. They can use financial flexibility to take advantage of another team's desperation. The move gives them options, and options are powerful in the NBA. But options do not sell jerseys the way LaMelo did. That is the tension. Charlotte gained a future, but lost a face. They gained flexibility, but lost electricity. They gained assets, but lost identity. Now the pressure shifts to the Hornets front office, because if they turn this package into a stronger team, history may call the trade brave. But if they waste the picks, miss on the players, and drift back into irrelevance, fans will remember exactly who they gave away. 3 ways this story can end. There are 3 possible endings to this trade, and every one of them carries pressure. The first ending is the dream ending for Minnesota. LaMelo stays healthy, builds chemistry with Anthony Edwards, and the Timberwolves become one of the most dangerous teams in the league. The offense gets faster, Edwards becomes even more efficient. LaMelo reminds everyone why his talent was worth the risk. Suddenly, the price Minnesota paid stops looking scary and starts looking bold. That is the version Wolves fans want to believe in. In that ending, the trade becomes a turning point. Minnesota no longer looks like a team trying to figure out how to support Edwards. It looks like a team built around 2 young stars with different strengths and one shared goal. If they win deep into the playoffs, nobody will care about the picks. Nobody will care about the criticism. Winning has a way of making risky decisions look genius. The second ending is the nightmare. LaMelo's health becomes an issue again. The backcourt fit never fully settles. Edwards gets frustrated carrying too much weight. The frontcourt depth becomes a problem. The defense gets tested. And suddenly, every asset Minnesota gave away starts to feel heavier. In that version, the trade does not just fail on the court. It damages the team's future flexibility. That is the fear behind every all-in move. When you chase a star, you are not only betting on talent, you are betting on health, chemistry, timing, coaching, and luck. If one piece breaks, the whole vision can start to wobble. The third ending belongs to Charlotte. Maybe the Hornets take the assets and quietly build something better. Maybe the picks become valuable. Maybe the young players grow. Maybe Naz Reid becomes a stabilizing piece. Maybe the flexibility lets Charlotte strike when another team gets desperate. If that happens, the trade may look painful in the moment, but smart in hindsight. That is why this story cannot be judged in 1 week. Blockbuster trades take years to reveal the truth. The first reaction is emotion. The final judgment comes later, after injuries, playoff losses, draft nights, development arcs, and unexpected turns. For now, Minnesota owns the spotlight. Charlotte owns the future. And LaMelo owns the pressure of proving that this was not just a dramatic trade, but the beginning of his most important chapter. The bigger lesson behind the trade. The biggest lesson in this story is not just about LaMelo Ball, the Charlotte Hornets, or the Minnesota Timberwolves. It is about how quickly the NBA world turns uncertainty into drama. A player gets traded, fans react emotionally, clips start moving, headlines get sharper, and suddenly the internet acts like it knows exactly what a person is feeling. That is dangerous, especially when the word being used is as serious as depression. If a player does not say it, if there is no verified quote, no real interview, and no trusted report, then the responsible thing is simple: do not turn it into truth. LaMelo's story shows how easily emotion can be misplaced. Charlotte fans were hurt. Minnesota fans were emotional about losing Naz Reid. The trade was shocking, and the reaction around it was real. But real fan sadness does not automatically become LaMelo's sadness. That distinction matters. On the basketball side, the lesson is just as powerful. Minnesota chose aggression. They saw Anthony Edwards entering the most important stage of his rise and decided not to waste time. They added a creative point guard who could raise the ceiling of the entire team. That is brave, but bravery in the NBA always comes with risk. Charlotte chose patience. They gave up the star who made the franchise exciting, but they gained assets that could shape the next era. That is painful. But sometimes painful decisions are the only way a small market team can create a better future. Neither side is guaranteed to be right. That is what makes this trade so fascinating. If LaMelo stays healthy and connects with Edwards, Minnesota could become one of the scariest teams in basketball. If the injuries return or the chemistry fails, the deal could become a warning about paying too much for upside. If Charlotte uses the return wisely, fans may one day understand the decision. If not, this trade will follow the franchise for years. But beyond the strategy, there is a human reminder here. Players are not just headlines. They are people navigating pressure, movement, family, expectation, criticism, and change. Fans can debate trades. Analysts can question decisions. Channels can tell dramatic stories. But the line between storytelling and misinformation should never disappear. So the real question is not whether LaMelo was secretly broken by this move. The real question is whether Minnesota can turn his talent into winning, whether Charlotte can turn pain into progress, and whether fans can learn to look past the loudest headline to find the real story underneath. If you believe LaMelo and Anthony Edwards can become one of the most dangerous backcourts in the NBA, comment 1. If you think Minnesota took too big of a risk, comment 2. If you think Charlotte will eventually win this trade, comment 3. And if you want more NBA stories with real drama, real analysis, and no fake narratives, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another NBA fan.